Do you remember when "be polite" wasn't just something your mom said? It was practically a system. A whole unwritten rulebook that every Canadian seemed to know by heart. Today we're cracking open that rulebook with 10 Canadian manners nobody remembers today. Library and archives. Canada has actually preserved etiquette guides that spelled out these rules in black and white, because once upon a time, politeness wasn't just a feeling, it was a practice, a daily habit. So which of these did your grandparents actually follow? 1. The calling card drop. Before texting existed, before the phone even existed, Canadians had visiting cards, small, stiff, perfectly printed cards that told the world exactly who you were. And the ritual around them was surprisingly precise. If you visited someone and they weren't home, you didn't just leave. You slid your card through the slot or left it on the hall tray as proof. I came. I thought of you. I showed up. In wealthier homes, a silver tray near the front door was kept specifically for collecting these cards. The number of cards on that tray told you how socially connected a family was. Calling card cases, often engraved metal or fine leather, were personal objects, almost like a pocket identity. Collections of these cases survive today in Canadian heritage museums, which tells you how seriously people took them. The habit started fading in the 1920s and 1930s as telephones became more common. Why leave a card when you could just ring ahead? By the 1950s, the practice had almost completely disappeared from everyday Canadian life, replaced first by the phone call, then by the doorbell, and eventually by the text that says OMW with zero punctuation. There's something beautiful about the idea, though. You showed up, even when nobody answered. That counted for something. 2. At home days. This one sounds almost futuristic, except it went the other direction entirely. In Canadian cities and towns, through the late 1800s and well into the early 20th century, many households had what were called at-home days. Set afternoons, maybe every second Tuesday or the first Friday of the month, when the family was formally available for visitors. No appointment needed, as long as you arrived in that window. It sounds rigid, but it was actually genius. It stopped people from dropping by at dinner time. It gave the host a chance to prepare, to have tea ready, the house tidy, a plate of something on the table. And it gave visitors a clear, socially acceptable time to show up without feeling like they were intruding. The system worked especially well for women managing a household who otherwise had no real way to control the social flow of their day. It faded fast after World War II. Two-income families meant nobody was reliably home on Tuesday afternoons anymore. Looser social rules meant dropping by became normal, and then eventually so invasive that we swung all the way to the opposite extreme. Now you have to book friends 2 weeks in advance just to grab a coffee. Somewhere between at-home Tuesdays and a shared Google Calendar, we lost something easy. 3. The secret language of bent corners. Here's where it gets genuinely fascinating. Visiting cards weren't just name tags, they were coded messages. A card delivered with its upper right corner folded meant you were visiting in person. A card with the upper left corner turned down meant condolences. And if you were leaving town for a long trip and wanted to say farewell to your whole social circle without making 20 individual visits, you sent a card marked PPC, the French abbreviation for pour prendre congé, which translates roughly to take my leave. This wasn't obscure or complicated to the people using it. It was as natural as a red receipt is today, a quiet signal in a shared language. And because Canada had deep French and British cultural roots running side by side, these little French abbreviations slipped easily into everyday Anglophone use without anyone blinking. The whole system was documented in etiquette books that circulated widely, some of which survive in Canadian archives. Emily Post's etiquette manuals, popular on both sides of the border, described these conventions in careful detail. What killed it? Honestly, the phone. The moment you could call someone to say goodbye, the whole elegant card and corner system became unnecessary. And once the shared language disappeared, nobody bothered teaching the next generation what PPC even meant. 4. Hats off. And the tiny tip walk into your neighbor's house in the 1940s. And the first thing a man did, before he said a word, before he even took off his coat, was remove his hat. It wasn't a big production, just a quiet gesture, but it carried weight. It said, "I respect your home. I'm here in good faith." And outside, the hat tip, that slight forward tilt of the brim, when passing a woman or an elder, was the old-school equivalent of a nod. It acknowledged people. It said, "I see you," without requiring a conversation. The rule extended to elevators, to church, to the national anthem. Men who skipped it were noticed. It was one of those unwritten rules that everyone enforced simply by watching. The habit began to collapse in the 1960s as formal menswear loosened up and hats began their long, slow exit from everyday life. The baseball cap, beloved, eternal, zero tipping required, finished the job. Once the hat changed, the ritual attached to it couldn't survive. Nobody tips a baseball cap. And if they tried, it would just look weird. 5. Title mode. Mr., Mrs., Miss. For a long time in Canada, children addressed adults by title and last name. Full stop, no exceptions. Your teacher was Mrs. Patterson. Your neighbor was Mr. Kowalski. Your dentist was Dr. Bergeron. You didn't use a first name until you were explicitly invited to, and that invitation might never come. And it wasn't just about names. The whole grammar of how children spoke to adults was more formal. May I be excused? Not, can I go? Yes, please, not, sure. No, thank you, not, nah. There was a register, a way of speaking, that acknowledged the difference between a child and an adult, and children were expected to operate in it in public settings. Schools were the main enforcer. Teachers corrected form of address the same way they corrected spelling. It was simply part of how you learned to function in the world. The shift came gradually through the 1970s and 1980s as educational philosophy moved toward warmth and connection. First names felt friendlier. The gap between adults and kids was deliberately softened, and while that brought real benefits, kids felt less intimidated, relationships felt more genuine, the old formal register quietly retired. Today, a child calling a teacher by their first name in most Canadian classrooms wouldn't raise a single eyebrow. 6. The bread and butter thank you note. The bread and butter letter, that's what they called it. A short handwritten note sent within a day or two of being someone's guest. Not a long letter, not a card with a printed sentiment, just a few lines in your own handwriting saying, "Thank you. The food was lovely. You made me feel welcome." It sounds simple because it was, but it was also expected. If someone hosted you for dinner and you didn't follow up with a note, it was noticed. Not in an angry way, but in that quiet, very Canadian way where people remember. Library and archives. Canada's documentation of social correspondence makes clear that this kind of letter writing was a normal domestic skill taught to children alongside penmanship. Girls especially were expected to master the short thank you note. It was considered basic social hygiene. What replaced it? First, the phone call. "Oh, I had such a lovely time." Then the email. Then the text. Then the reaction emoji under someone's Instagram story of the dinner table. Each step made it faster and easier, and each step made it mean a little less. The handwritten note meant something precisely because it took effort. You had to sit down, find paper, form the words, seal the envelope, find a stamp. That friction was the point. It proved the thanks was real. 7. RSVP and actually meaning. Once upon a time in Canada, an invitation came with a reply card, a small stamped card that you were expected to fill out and mail back. "Yes, I'll be there," or "regrets," the formal word for "I'm so sorry, I can't make it." Either way you responded, that was the deal. The host needed to know. They were ordering food, arranging seating, planning the evening around a specific number of people. An unanswered invitation wasn't just rude, it was genuinely disruptive. It meant someone was cooking in the dark. The word regrets on a formal invitation is still used today. But most people under 40 have never sent an actual reply card in an envelope. The whole system assumed a pace of life where people planned far enough ahead to mail things back and forth, and that pace is simply gone. Modern RSVP culture is famously broken. People say yes and don't show. People don't respond at all. Event planners now routinely overcount because they assume a percentage of confirmed guests will simply vanish. The old system wasn't perfect, but it kept everyone honest in a way that the group text simply doesn't. 8. Party line phone manners. This one is deeply Canadian, especially for anyone who grew up in a small town or a rural area. Through the 1940s, 1950s, and even into the 1960s, many Canadian households shared a telephone line with their neighbors. It was called a party line, and it worked exactly as awkwardly as it sounds. Each household had its own ring pattern, 2 short rings or 1 long one, and you were expected to only pick up for your own ring. If you picked up and someone was already talking, you quietly hung up and waited. The manners around this were unspoken but ironclad. You kept your call short because someone down the street might need the line urgently. You didn't listen in on other calls, or at least you weren't supposed to. You didn't hog the line for idle chat when you knew a neighbor was expecting an important call. It was one of those cases where politeness wasn't just nice, it was functional. If you were rude with the party line, the whole community felt it. Your neighbors knew. Your reputation was attached to your ring pattern. Private lines eventually replaced shared ones, and the social pressure dissolved. But for a generation of Canadians, the party line taught a lesson that's harder to teach now. Shared resources require shared consideration. 9. Boots off at the door and indoor shoes at school. This one isn't fully gone. Canadians still take their shoes off at the door more consistently than almost any other nationality. But the school version of this habit has faded in ways that people forget. For generations of Canadian kids, especially in provinces that got serious snow, changing into indoor shoes at school was simply part of the day. You arrived in winter boots, heavy, wet, salty, and you swapped them for your indoor shoes before going to class. The boots stayed by the door. The gym shoes came on. This was not controversial. It was just what you did. It made practical sense. Canadian winters are brutal. Floors stay cleaner, buildings stay warmer. Salt doesn't eat the hallway tiles. But it was also a kind of manners, an acknowledgement that you were entering a shared space that belonged to everyone, and you had a responsibility not to wreck it. Weather shaped Canadian politeness more than people realize. The long winter forced a kind of collective consideration. You thought about the mess you brought in because everyone had to live with it. Some schools still do this, many don't, and a whole generation of Canadians grew up tracking in whatever they wanted, which felt like freedom at the time. 10. Mourning stationery and the formal condolence note. This last one is the quietest, and maybe the most powerful. When someone died in an earlier era of Canadian life, there were formal ways of communicating grief. Mourning stationery, notepaper and envelopes trimmed with a thick black border, was used by grieving families for their correspondence. The width of that black border signaled the depth and recency of the loss. In the first months after a death, the border was widest. As time passed, it narrowed. Receiving a condolence note on black-bordered paper told you everything before you read a word. On the receiving end, people were expected to write proper condolence notes in return. Not a comment, not a heart emoji, not a message on a Facebook memorial page. A real letter, brief, specific, warm, mentioning the person who had died by name, sharing a specific memory if you had one. Canadian newspapers of the period often ran formal notices in this same language, measured, respectful, precise. Grief had a shared vocabulary, and everyone knew how to speak it. What we have now isn't worse exactly, it's just different. But there's something that gets lost when condolences move at the speed of a scroll. The old way forced you to slow down, to sit with the loss for a moment, to put it into words that would last. If this brought back a memory, a grandparent's thank you notes, your mom's boot tray, or a party line you definitely eavesdropped on, drop it in the comments. We'd love to hear it. And if you enjoyed this trip back in time, hit that like button and subscribe.